Hi, I'm Calvin Taylor.
My name is Murphy Ward.
I'm Dominic Pilla.
I'm Will Jonke.
I'm Josh Herrick.
And this is Current.
So our roles in the whole project was I was the product owner.
I was a developer.
I was a developer.
I'm also a developer.
And I was IT/media production guy.
And so this was an idea that I already had kind of beforehand, but something I really didn't have the team to kind of work on and attack. So for the most part, my idea was to try to make a more engaged and active form of social media based off proximity and the ability to search for both events and users. So with that, that's where kind of the idea was, and then we kind of refined that and went through the brainstorm session and then into the development of the app. So we have our cameraman jump back over there, and then we'll kind of go through sprint one, and then we'll progress through the other sprints as well.
So Sprint 1 was our planning stage for the project. To start out with, we were just basically doing planning for everything that we're going to do throughout the app. To start, we have Josh here to talk about what he learned about Firebase.
Yeah, so in Sprint 1, I just sort of looked up Firebase and how to implement that in iOS, and just to get up to speed with what Murphy had already worked on.
Alright. Next, we're going to jump to behind the camera with Calvin.
Alright, so one of my first tasks, before doing any film editing or shooting or anything like that, I had to brainstorm some logos to be used for our current app. And there's the little library right there. We ended up going up, deciding on that one. It's currently highlighted, the kind of darker gray background with blue and turquoise colors right there. And yep.
Will?
On the sprint, I added some of the storage for the actual hooks, for the events in the app. So just actual storage in the database, the names and the IDs of the hooks, locations, things like that, details about the actual hook, and just set it up for the primary key of the hooks, so we can differentiate between them in the database.
Alright. Myself, since we were picking up a project that Murphy had already began working on, is a bit scrambled around with a couple floating around views, so I went ahead and we planned out how we're going to go ahead and navigate throughout the app, and then along with that, in my planning stage for rearranging the storyboard, developed the new navigation that would flow a little better for the users throughout the app.
And then for this first section, I generated a list of interests. So I was thinking about how to structure. So I thought of like maybe using like an enum to describe what kind of interest maybe a user has and how that would interplay with the events that they would be associated with. And so we did that, and besides that, we just discussed kind of the whole idea, kind of got everybody else up to speed on the project, and like my ideas with it, and maybe like what it could become.
Alright, and so then for our next 3 following sprints, we were on a 2-week sprint run, and so sprint 2, we're going to go ahead and get into the research stage and so on. Alright, so sprint 2, we were working on researching technologies that we're going to use throughout the app. To start off, we're going to go with Will.
Firebase didn't have a good way to store geolocations. You can only query by a single property, and so we used GeoFire, and we did some research on that. Found out that you can it hashes the latitude and the longitude together and makes a queryable property to search the database for. And Murphy has a bit more on that.
Yes, that was kind of one of the things that when we hit that, I'll just kind of jump down to mine. So which I already talked about GeoFire. So we did a little bit of research, but like not only the best uses, but also implementation, and just in general, some of the difficulties of like, okay, well, we need to be able to store users at like wherever they're currently at, but then also where a hook is at, and then checking within a certain range of that. So like being able to establish a center point and then establish a radii or like for the span was something that I was looking into in like best ways and other ways that other users. So watched a lot of videos out there about that.
All right, so then I was working on researching map functionality. We had a feature of ours in the Ripple is being able to increase or decrease the size of the span you want to do a query on. So between 100 to 500 yards away, I had a research on taking that number and formulating it into a span that we could then query on Firebase to then retrieve users, which is interesting. Josh, researching Firebase.
I researched more into Firebase to see what we could get out of it. So basically it's a NoSQL database that's pretty good with Swift and Android and a few other languages. Since we're working with iOS, it works with Swift great. One of the problems is that it doesn't really scale up that well, so in the future we might want to add an abstraction layer for a database, but other than that, for standing up this app, it works great.
All right, and Calvin.
Yep, so this sprint, I had a bunch of different logos, different variations of logos that I had made. I just kind of had to decide which one we were going to use, kind of pitch some ideas or pitch them to the group. We ended up going with one that isn't currently, was it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that darker gray one with the blue and turquoise color tones there. Yep, so that was it.
All right. Said we're sprint 2. All right, so this is sprint 3. This was a development stage in our project. Go ahead and start out with Josh, developing the authentication system for Firebase.
Yeah, so I worked on the authentication for Firebase, which uses the email as the unique ID and basically have persistence of login when you're using the app.
Will?
Yeah, in this sprint, just implemented the geolocation storage in the Firebase. We didn't get it completely working, but we got a basic generic version working. Just took all the research we learned from the last sprint and actually put it into the app.
All right, myself, I developed the sign in and register views, worked a lot with making the UI look nice and neat, user-friendly, as well as implementing Josh's authentication system for Firebase.
Yeah, for my section, I developed the Ripple feature. So the way that I accomplished that was by using gesture recognizer to scale a view that would then check based on the size. It would then kind of bracket that in between 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, 400 yards, or 500 yards. And then based on the index of a segment control, whether you said hooks, users, or both, it would pull that data down from Firebase and load it into another view.
All right, on this sprint, I implemented some UI icons into the app. Found a couple on the internet that seemed nice and minimalistic enough. Some of those filter icons, the sort, and those other two. And yeah, that's about it.
For Sprint 4, this was our finalization of development and our planning and shooting and editing stage for the final presentation video and promo video. To start out, we got Calvin Taylor.
Yep, so planned out where and what was going to happen in the promo video. We decided to shoot it in Laffrey and amongst the library and the stairwell. You will see that montage coming up. And edited it in a separate sprint. Edited that little promo piece in Adobe Premiere. And that's about it for that one.
All right. Next up, in my finalization of development, we needed to recreate a repository. The previous one was having a bit of an issue with merge conflicts and whatnot, so went ahead and recreated the repository. I pulled in a software called GitKraken to sort of simplify the process, kind of gets rid of the command line and offers a bunch of other functionality as well as a merging tool. Also in Sprint 4 myself, I created the prototype in Adobe XD, and finally I'm still implementing the profile view for current. Josh?
I worked on developing the filters module for the ripples. So what that is taking all the categories that we thought of, like sports, school, studying, and putting that into a table view, bringing that up in a modal view whenever you want to search for a different filter or different category that you want to look for when you're creating a hook, searching for hooks, or searching for users. And I'm also in charge of getting the final report written, getting everything set up, and making sure that it gets done.
So for Sprint 4, I worked on the hook tab, and so the hook tab is through navigation, you enter it, and then we decided that it would be good to actually have a segment control to actually balance looking and adding a new hook, like based off the ones that you own or the current user associated with it, and then on the other hand having the other section that's strictly for the hooks that you've bitten onto or committed to, so the events that you said that you want to partake in, and then the ability to transition between creating a new one and then also like editing a little bit of what you have already for the hooks that you've been associated with.
This sprint, I did a lot of planning for the final presentation, all the scripts and the dialogues and all the presentations, and the descriptions of the sprints and everything for that. Helps a lot with the actual shooting of the final presentation, which is still in progress because we're doing it right now, and helped Kelvin a lot with editing the promo video and that sort of thing.
Alright, so this was a prototype that I drafted up during the sprint. This is a sign-in screen that we decided on. We got a little segmented control to switch between sign-in and register. Anyways, in this prototype done with Adobe XD, I'll go ahead and bring you through our sort of app flow. So after you sign in, you're going to be brought to the ripple screen, where you'll be able to set the range for how far you want to ripple out. Ripples will be based on hooks, users, or both, returning results for events that you're going to be able to go to or people you're going to be able to connect with. So if we go ahead and hit right in the center, we're going to get a list of hooks that we have. I went ahead and filtered on electrical engineering. We got one right here by Josh. He's got a study group, and so I can go ahead and click on that. Here I'll be able to join him. I'll be able to see a description of what it is and when the hook is going to expire, meaning disappear and I won't be able to join it anymore, assuming that he's done studying. So I'm going to go ahead and ask to join right here. I'm going to get a little pop-up. I'll be able to type in a message, send it to him, and he'll be able to confirm or deny me joining him. So going back, next part we got is the hooks. So currently I'm a user on there. I've got no hooks. I haven't created any. I'm going to go ahead and click up here, add one. This is a little template, kind of a skeleton for how you would add a hook. Go ahead and add your images, name, location, members, categories, description. Furthermore, it's a little filled out one that you might see. I'm going to go ahead and post it. And so now it's in my table view. I can see my hooks and so on. To check out my profile, it's a little template profile you got here. So you got your little avatar picture, name, quote, where you're located, and then down here you can see your hooks, your ripples, and your connections, aka friends list. If I want to go ahead and click on hooks, I can see ones that I've created. And that was basically the quick quick run through of a sort of prototype that we've developed for Current. All right, so Dominic here. I'm going to go ahead and show you the sign-in and registration features that I created for the app. We drew a bit of inspiration from a YouTuber of ours that we like called Let's Build That App. So here you can see in the sign-in portion, you go ahead and log in with your email and password. There is error checking to see if the fields are empty, or of course if you enter in your email or password wrong, you will be prompted that it is incorrect. Registration over here has quite a few more fields, including first name, last name, and username, which are used elsewhere throughout the app. To go on, assuming that you sign in, we have a tab bar sort of navigation, and sliding over now to Murphy and what he worked on for Rippling.
Yeah, so for here, we just as a placeholder, we have the range label, and then inside we have a button with an image placed in it rather than the typical shape. So that's what this C right here is. Eventually, this would be kind of established to be the same C that you would see for the current app itself, or the for the logo in that spot. And then around it is just a placeholder ring. And this ring is actually an image that we scaled throughout. So based on if you do a pinch gesture, which we use implemented and you have to use the Alt or the control, the options, and on the keyboard, you could pull and scale that, and then it would then break down and extrapolate to what the range would be based on the scalability of the actual shape. And then based on the input you picked, whether it's users, hooks, or both, it would then send that to Firebase and say, okay, I need to return all users, or users based off of some criteria such as the range, and it would take that over to the next section, which would be the hooks and users. So based on what you send, which that's passed over to the hooks and user table view, or this view controller rather, and then in there we have a search bar that didn't get full functionality in it, but we did add with the filters. We have the leftmost filter would be to use the actual filter enum that was referred to earlier in the presentation, and it will load this entire table view with the count of the array of users or hooks or such. And then what we made was a modal filter here, view controller, and in that each of the cells are comprised of that you can pass back to the last view. When with the submit, will actually give the filters that you can use to go through and siphon through the return the query that you had. And then if you click on any given cell, it takes you over to this inspect user view controller, which will then with a user will give you the certain data, and we'll look through the first name, last name, number of hooks, etc., and then interests that they have. And then if we go down here to the hooks section, the way that is set up is there's obviously through navigation, and then once you're through the navigation, it then will break up the cell or table view based off of the hooks that you own specifically, and with the capability to make another one, or the hooks that the hooks that you are associated with or have committed to, which would be anything that you're in there, the hooks given members table. And then here we have the create a hook based on which segue you use. You have the create a hook with just a name placeholder for the moment, and then also which is what creating it, which is what at least the bare minimum what you need. And then on the other side would just be where you could edit it. So if you want to go up here to this folder here, we can look at the models for you. So I'm gonna click models just for the current user, the first one. Some of the data that we would look at handling early at least, you can see here. Technically in this we're using importing core location, but if you import GeoFire and Firebase, you actually don't need to import core location because it gets written over because it just utilizes that for GeoFire. But for just right now, I use that just so I could access core location. But you can see here that with things we would be handling with the first ones we saw and we see in the Firebase actual database, it's like an email, first name, last name, password, username, and then interest being an array of interests that kind of are listed throughout, and then the location and the depth being an eventual form of security or visibility by other users. And so we have different a convenience initializer. We worked on just making a normal initializer here with just off of basic information, and other ones based off of setting interests or whatnot. So that you see at the bottom here, if you want to go back, you would see at the bottom here with the interest, there's just a few basic ones made at the moment, but I added a few different things such as like a count, so that you can always just count how many based off the hash value of the last element. You can check how many count are in the given enum, or all the values, just as like if you want to access them as an array. Okay, and then we'll go to hooks real quick, and then we can go back to, you can talk about the profile. So then for kind of much the same in this one, we just have the name, the owner, user, because in Firebase you have to have two-way verification of like a hook has to have an owner, and then an owner has to own that hook. You would then have, you know, start date, expiration date, members, filters, etc., etc. Go on.
Alright, so in final, we have our profile section of the app, which I have not been able to complete yet. Here you'll be able to have your avatar picture, where you're currently located, a motto, your name, and then also to be implemented is a sort of drop-down menu that will be located towards the bottom that will display your hooks, your ripples, and your connections, aka friends. Right there, as well as settings and logout feature and whatnot. And that's basically the app. So we'll go ahead and give a live demonstration as well. So here you can see right whenever you pull up the app, you're going to be asked to sign in. It is an account-based application. So go ahead and if you've never been to that first, then you can go over to register. Get a little nice slide up technique, animation I mean. You'd be able to go ahead and fill that out, register, and be added to Firebase. For this though, I've already got an account created. Go ahead and just log in. And to demonstrate the app failing, if it's incorrect login, just go ahead and hit sign in. Get a little alert here saying incorrect email or password. Go ahead and have a correct sign in, and we get brought to the first page that is rippling.
Yeah, so as we said here, what you have with this ripple is the ability to like change this based off a pinch. Right now, so you know, show the value up here, but obviously we would add, you know, proper text, or maybe even whenever with a button click, it would then show you like the actual rippling effect through the image. So we're gonna do it through users. Click here. So as I said there are 6 users. So you can see here there's 6 users on this. And what you have here is like, you know, 2, 4, 6, 0, the 1, Black Zach, Harmonator, Mittens, just different, and as you can see, like, you know, Dominic. So eventually, since like, you know, all of these were created in the same spot, that they all have, it's easy to find, but eventually the goal would be to implement more with GeoFire to say like being able to put them in different spots, but considering that I have an iMac and I only have it in one spot, it doesn't get moved around that much, so we'll just, you know, in general, you can click on this. It would have, this is where it would populate with your username and first name, etc. So then we'll go on to the hooks. Have this section. So you can add a hook, go through and adding a hook, and the ability to then populate this into Firebase, blah, 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 go through. We can actually do that eventually, but here we go for profile. This is where you would talk about that.
Alright, so profile as before, you'd have your avatar picture here. First name, last name, all your basic information. Quick access edit button to go ahead and change any fields that we want to allow you to. Obviously no primary keys like email or username, but you go ahead and change your password, first name and last name, avatar picture and stuff like that. We'd also like to be able to add a settings option here to be able to change maybe some basic filtering that you want throughout the app, and privacy, of course, and then you'd be able to log out and whatnot. But that is basically where we've gotten so far. We plan on continuing development over time.